Hey, thanks for coming back, everybody. You can see on the screen with me, I have a guest today. His name is Judge Jim Gray. This is a time of politics out there in the world, and we're going to talk about a little bit about that, but in a different light, a different slant, a slant I think you're going to like. Judge Gray is a retired judge. He was the presiding judge of the Superior Court of Orange County, California. Very high position to be a judge. He's also been a member of the California Judicial Council, as well as the California Judicial Council's Advisory Committee on, and this is the stuff that is important, juvenile law, the Alcohol Advisory Board to the Orange County Board of Supervisors, and that's California, Orange County, California, the Advisory Board of the California Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs, and also he was an advisory board on the Orange County Law Library. He's also been a member of the Board of Counselors. This is a big deal for anybody that's out in the law world, of the USC Law School. So it's an honor to have you here, Judge. And I just want to say that everyone should understand this gentleman was the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party in 2012, along with Gary Johnson, who was the presidential candidate. He ran for nomination of the Libertarian Party presidential slot in 2020 and did not make it. I actually interviewed Jo Jorgensen on our show, so it was great to have her on. And he has a new book out called All Rise, The Libertarian Way with Judge Jim Gray. Now, that's published by Histria Books and also at his website. You can find out more about him and the book at Judge Jim Gray, and Gray is Gray, not EY.com. So there's a bit of intro. We are going to talk. I'm interested in this because I frankly am commonly wondering really where libertarianism falls within the whole thing that we see out there, Judge. So I'm really happy to have you on today. Thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you. It's just nice to be with you again. It's always good to talk with good people. I believe that the Libertarian Party is the only mainstream party in American political thought today. We quote Thomas Jefferson, who was a prototype libertarian. I don't care if you worship one God, 20 gods, or no God. It doesn't pick my pocket and it doesn't break my leg. Live and let live. We do not want to thrive by being involved with government. We want everyone to thrive. And today, the Republicans and Democrats, I tell you, Sean, it makes a huge difference who wins the presidency, who wins various elective offices, because they spend a lot of money, of our tax money, our government money, on their supporters, on their cronies. We wouldn't spend nearly that much. So we quote Thomas Sowell also, who said, you know, the first rule of economics is scarcity. There's never enough goods and services to meet the demand. But the first rule of politics is to ignore the first rule of economics. Libertarians do not ignore it, and the other political parties do, and that's why in many ways we don't get elected quite as often. But I think that you go to my website, judgejimgray.com, and I wrote a column called One Man's Libertarian White Paper. It shows who the winners and the losers would be in a libertarian world, and I think it'd be pretty eye-opening. I'll bet you 70% of the viewers right this minute are full-time libertarians, and the remainder are at least part-time libertarians. So I'm proud of who we are.
Interesting that you bring up Thomas Jefferson. Tie it in. How's he, when you say that, the first libertarian or the person who pushed it out first, he was obviously big on states' rights, did not want a national government trouncing on the people. So give us a little bit, I really like that history, I've studied it a lot. Give us a little bit of that, how Thomas Jefferson fits in here.
Well, I can certainly do that. Of course, he wrote the Declaration of Independence. That's a pretty good start. But yep. I've also written with two partners. I've written a musical. It's called Convention, The Birth of America. And so it's about the Constitutional Convention of 1787. So I did quite a bit of research on this, Sean, as you can imagine. And we're pretty accurate with regard to what happened. There were 55 delegates that were attended. All 50, they debated, they argued, they fought about virtually everything. But the thing that each of those 55 delegates believed was the most important function of government was protecting our liberties from the encroachment of government. I'm going to even say that again. The most important thing for a function of government was protecting our liberties from the encroachment of government. Number two important was keeping us safe. So we have lost that. And we have so many immigrants coming to our country now that they fled from various governments like, China and Russia and places that are really, really demagogic. And now they look really concerned that our government is becoming more like the ones that they fled from. And it's up to us. It's our government. If it's not working, it's our fault. We should educate ourselves. We should be active because it's our responsibility.
Interesting that you point out that 70% of the people would probably align with the principles of being a libertarian. Let's just dispel a few myths first. Libertarian, first, I'm a big person.
That'll take a long time, Sean. There are lots of myths about libertarian.
You may know the top 5. I mean, let me have you bring it up. What do you think the top 5 myths are? And let's just dispel those. Bang, bang, bang.
Well, we have allowed other people to label us. So Ayn Rand is probably responsible for the biggest one, which is greed is good. Well, the way she was talking about it in her fiction, in her works, was you act in your own economic self-interest, it works. You will be successful, you will compete, you will have, and other people will be successful as well. But greed is good. We're not greedy. In fact, we're the opposite of that. We're kooks. Well, we're egghead, that sort of thing. No, we really do, though, roll up our sleeves, dig into it, but because we are financially responsible. We're financially responsible. And I can tell you, Sean, and you probably are aware of this, I hope our listeners and viewers are as well, the biggest threat to the security of the United States of America is our deficit. It's our economy. And I'm going to be fine. I'm a lot older than you are, Sean, but you're probably going to be okay too. But our children, our grandchildren are pretty close to bankrupt because of our action now. And it's going to be visited upon them. Libertarians are financially responsible, socially accepting. So live and let live, as goes back to Thomas Jefferson. I was active as a sitting trial court judge back in 1992. Did something extremely unusual. I held a press conference. Judges don't do that. And told anyone that would listen, our nation's drug policy is not working. We're leading the world in the incarceration of our people. We have a bigger drug problem here in our country than pretty much anywhere else in the world. And all the graft and the corruption. Look at Mexico, for example. All of the violence, the fraud, the beheadings have nothing to do with drugs at all. It's all the drug money that causes those things, and it's our drug money. So this is a very libertarian issue. I, as an adult, should be able to put whatever it is. Let me start over. Robert Downey Jr. is a very successful actor, and he has a heroin problem and has for a long time. It makes as much sense to me to put Robert Downey Jr. in jail for his heroin problem as it would have Betty Ford in jail for her alcohol problem. Of course, Betty Ford was President Gerald Ford's wife and an acknowledged alcoholic. It's the same thing, isn't it? It's a medical issue. Bring them closer to medical professionals that can help them instead of labeling the automatic criminals and pushing them farther away. But if Robert Downey Jr., Betty Ford, you or I drive a motor vehicle while impaired by, you name it, methamphetamines, marijuana, alcohol, which is my drug of choice, that's a crime. What's the difference? We've never focused on this enough. What's the difference? Now, by my action, I'm putting your safety at risk. Legitimate criminal justice issue. Then libertarian, it makes as much sense, again, for the government to control what I, as an adult, put into my body, so it does what I put into my mind. It's none of their business, as long as I'm not a threat to you.
Yeah. Okay. So that thank you. Other than
that, I have no opinion whatsoever.
That's awesome, Judge. I will say this, that the point about the deficit, anybody listening to my show knows, I went around the country in 2016. I wrote a book called How to Press America's Reset Button, based on the fact that our national debt was getting out of control and I couldn't sleep at night. So I wrote this book, spent a year on the road getting media to talk about this issue of our national debt. So it's interesting that you bring that up. I preach all the time that how our country comes apart, how we lose as our status in the world, and even as a country, will be financial. It will not probably be by military force. It will be by us having so much debt that no one in the world is going to trust a dollar anymore. So anyway, we're very much aligned in that. And I also want to point out that the drug policy that you mentioned is outrageous, the way that things have gone with that. Now you do bring up something that I find that I wonder if I am not at odds sometimes with libertarians that I have read. I've tried to one time what is libertarianism? I do feel there is a place for laws to make sure that we're all protected to an extent. Now, your comment about, hey, you shouldn't tell me what I can and cannot put in my body is fine when it's in someone's home and doesn't ever leave the home and then affect me as I'm roaming around in my world. Otherwise, we start having our own justice taken over because of some, so we don't want that. So talk to me about that, because that's the one issue I'm like, yep, I'm not for big government, but at the same time, there is a place for government. There is a place for laws. So talk to me about that, Judge. And
Well,
speaking to a judge, I mean, this is a very interesting question to a
well,
judge.
it just so happens, if you look at that document, what's it called? The United States Constitution. We were just talking about it. Article 1, Section 8 talks about what powers are delegated by us, we the people, to the federal government. And it doesn't have anything to do with education. It doesn't have anything to do with healthcare. Government should not be involved in those things, but make contracts, set up a judiciary, enforce warranties, enforce, if I were to, hit you, assault you, all of those are crimes. We need government to protect us from each other. Just to get back to Robert Downey Jr., the criminal justice system is designed for and quite effective at protecting us from each other, but it's not designed for and totally ineffective at protecting us from ourselves. So that's a different issue. That's a medical issue. But protect me from you, you from me, yes, that's a definite government function. Antitrust, child welfare laws, child work laws, all of those sorts of things. Speed limits. I go for speed limits. I would say that if you are in public closer than 6 feet to somebody else, you should wear a mask. Is that libertarian? Well, I'm a libertarian, so that's my view. But no one has all the answers. But I think most libertarians are very responsible, concerned people. We led the charge with regard to gay rights, racial equality, that sort of thing. Treat people as people, equal rights for all, equal opportunities for all. Ben Franklin at the end of that said, you can pursue justice or pursue happiness, but you have to pursue it on your own. You've got to pursue it. You'll have an equal opportunity to pursue that. And I will go so far as to say, and I said this in my book, the All Rise book, which, by the way, is a play on words. All rise is what people say when a judge enters for the first time. But I say if we follow these libertarian values, these libertarian approaches and principles, we will all rise together. And that is the theme from the book. And so we have that in there. I would adopt Milton Friedman. In fact, his Free to Choose is one of the books right behind me. Freedom, he would have what he called a negative income tax, but I would call a stipend, so that we would have a safety net among all the people here in our country that are here legally, that are citizens or green card. And if you're 18 years of age and you earn no money, and I don't care why, we will give you a stipend of, say, $1,250 a month. And then between $0 and $30,000, for every dollar you earn, you'll lose 50 cents of your stipend. So you always have an incentive to earn the extra dollar. Then do away with all this other welfare stuff, all the fraud, all the bureaucracy, all the intrusion. You wouldn't need it unless you have truly special needs. Is that libertarian? Well, Milton Friedman's about as libertarian as it gets, but we disagree with each other on some things. But then getting rid of this welfare stuff, because it has incentives. I've had approval. I've been allowed by my daughter, who's in her 40s now, and she's bipolar, and she is not able to work. So I found her a job. She was volunteering for a veterans group, and I told them behind her back, hey, if you give her a job, pay her $12 an hour, I will pay you $15 an hour. Sean, we found out very quickly, if she worked more than 10 hours a week, she would lose more in her Social Security benefits that she'd gained by working. Yeah. So in fact, she volunteered and I paid her on the side, but a father can do that. But no, you need incentives to do what's socially acceptable. Today, it is socially acceptable and make more money to be a single parent than to live with the father of your children, because you lose money from the Social Security aspect. Yep. So we have our incentives wrong. Libertarians understand incentives. Incentives matter. That's where libertarians come down.
Interesting. I have to take, I just got to go back to the speeding laws. I just want everyone else to follow the law, Judge, and I just rather not, if that's okay. That's my new party, is I go as fast as I want, but you guys all, if you can't drive, You slow down, but if you can drive like me, then you can go fast. But anyway, just making light of that. Let's go to the
Sean, I heard there was a study one time, and they were asking, are you an above average or below average driver? And everybody was above average, which makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Hey, I've done work in helping to do a little criminal reform in my life, and every person that came in from the court. This was a court. Oh, you're a judge. So this was in West Covina, California. So in a municipal court, and they pushed people into our it's called Criminon, and they pushed people into our center. It was just like set up like a school, like a little tables, and they had to pay $150 or go to jail. They had a choice: you either do this program or go to jail. They came in, and it was very simple, and we taught them kind of life skills, but the funny part was everybody that walked in was innocent. No matter what happened, no matter what the deal was, they're innocent. So I understand that. Now, I will say this, by the time they walked out, the way the program worked, they all understood what they had done to actually get in their situation. It was really effective. But I understand that about drivers. Everybody thinks they're a good driver. Come on, give me a break. So, all right, let's talk about this incentive thing. We're going to hit what I want to hit at some point, Judge, is I want you to go through the main core stuff that libertarians believe in, so people can go, oh yeah, I agree. But there's a lot. There's so many. See, I told you beforehand, there's so many questions I can come and ask you with. So let's talk about the incentive thing for a second, because I have interviewed a number of people, including blacks, who have talked about the slavery, quote unquote, system set up by our welfare system that keeps these people poor, that keeps them stuck down and dependent upon our government. And it's just, and these are leaders in the black community who are outraged by the way the system is keeping their people stuck. So talk to me a little more, because you really hit a nerve with me there. It's a nerve in our country. We need to be able to help these people win in this system. Now, the thing that you said there, I think, Judge, circling back to what you said, if we gave everybody a stipend, what I'm missing is, what's the incentive for them to work? If they have a stipend for $1,200 a month, why should they go work?
Because they want to improve themselves. Maybe they want to go back to school. Maybe they're just flat out lazy. But one way or the other, if they get a job and they earn $10, they'll lose $5 of their stipend, but now they'll have $15 instead of $10. Incentives matter. Incentives work. And Milton Friedman, again, if I may quote him, we should judge our programs by their results, not their good intentions. So let's talk about the minimum wage law. Oh, Democrats, oh, poor baby, all that sort of stuff. No, because what happens, think McDonald's, Sean. It used to be we'd go to McDonald's and buy our Big Mac and French fries, and we'd talk to a cashier, and we'd be able to deal with a person. But then with the minimum wage laws, now what do? We use a computer because they're priced out of a job. And so you can't progress on the economic ladder unless you get in on the bottom rung. And there's some people, I'm sorry to say it, okay, now I'm being libertarian and crass or greedy, whatever, but some people are not worth $15 an hour. That's why their jobs are phased out. And so Thomas Sowell again said in 1948, we didn't have any, as a practical matter, had no minimum wage laws. There was about 10% of the black males between 16 and 18 years of age who were unemployed, 10%. Then we start putting in between 1948 and 1994, something on the order of all of these minimum wage laws, and there was a minimum of 30% unemployment of black males between 16 and 18, and some years it was 30, 40, and 50%, caused by government. Rent control. It doesn't work. Sounds good, doesn't work, because the landlords are going to take out their apartment building and put in a parking lot or something if they can't get the return on investment. So you get the government out of the way. That's what libertarians would do. We believe in competition. So you want one of the huge issues, here it is, school choice. Milton Friedman asked me one time in person, I was running a drug program at the time, and we were talking, and he said, Jim, I want parents to be able to choose where their government money is going to be spent for the education of their children. So if you were the parent of a two college-age children, what country in the world would you want them to go to get the best education that he or she could? And I said, well, probably our country, probably the United States. He said, that's right. If you were the parent of a high school age child, what country would you want your child to go to get the best education he or she could? Said, I'm not sure, but probably not the United States of America. He said, I agree with that too. Why? Because you can choose where your money is spent for college. You cannot choose for high school. So you have competition for the college dollar, and you get quality. So I was in Milwaukee, actually, running for vice president in 2012, and was talking about school choice. And the audience there started wagging their fingers at me saying, well, Judge Gray, we've had school choice here for about 8 to 10 years. We don't have any bad schools anymore. Either they got better because they started to lose their clients, their customers, or they went out of business. Somebody else came in and took over for them. All of which I say, good. So I've written an op-ed piece. It's an open letter to the ACLU, the NAACP, MALDEF, and LULAC, saying school choice. It's a tragedy in our country that we have so many government schools that are failing our children, mostly in lower economic areas. You know, I have school choice. When I came to Orange County, I chose Irvine because they have good schools. I mean, that was a choice. But mostly in the lower economic areas, they don't have that choice. That is where most of your constituents are, ACLU and NAACP, people of color. It's not racial, it's economic, but none one way or the other. But if they could choose where their government money would be spent for the education of their children, they would choose excellence and they would receive it. And who is in a better position to decide where your child should go and what type of education your child should get, you or the government? But today it's the government that dictates where you as the customer will send your child. No. So that is something that libertarians stand for, choice in education. Why doesn't it happen? You know as well as I do. It's the teachers' unions. They're not caring about the children. They just want higher pensions and higher money for them. But that's where the money goes for the ACLU and for MALDEF and these other groups too. Call them out on it. Libertarians are not popular with public employers unions, but they're certainly popular with children.
All right, let's all you listeners out there just take a breath. Do you see this guy going to town here? This is a retired gentleman who has worked his life and is still swinging as hard as he can to help this country. Judge, I just have to pause for a second because pretty much everything's coming out of your mouth I agree with, number one. Number two, I'm just impressed by your passion for this, even when you wouldn't have to. I'm sure sitting in Orange County, California, you are doing fine. You do not have to put yourself out there like this. And we go out and we find change makers in the world and try to have them on our show. And sir, you fit right into that category. So I just for a second, I want to appreciate you and just have the listeners go, look, take this guy's example, step up and step out and try to help our country make it better. So anyway, I just also want to say as a side note, I know you got something to say. Hang on. One other thing I want to say is there are people just freaking out right now listening to you. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me that you just said that someone may not be worth that money and they'd have to actually show their worth? You know, it's unfortunate that because when we had our founders come over here, we had the Pilgrims come over here all the way up and through the foundation of our country. These people had to work. They had to get out and they had to go out in the woods and they had to hunt and they had to do this and and life was tough and they might get killed by some bear and who knows what else was going to go on. And the fittest survived. Now, somehow we've gotten ourselves into this situation in our country, and I think it's perpetuated by education, is that somehow it's like the government's supposed to take care of you. Government's going to make sure you're not going to fall. The government. And that's what this war we have going on in our country, I think, is there's a side of the people who think, hey, I'm not supposed to be responsible for me. It's got to come from the government, make sure I'm okay. And then you got this other side, and it's not just two sides. There's many different flows. But there's another thing that I'm glad we're talking about this is you ultimately are responsible. And I just want to tie in old Benjamin Franklin here for a second. Because as they walked out of that constitutional convention, you know, that famous thing where the woman said, what kind of a government do we have? And he said, you know, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. And this is a really, you know, I've talked about the national debt and all that stuff about keeping it, but this is core at keeping it, which we have to make sure that us as a group, as a country, are producing our way and we're not getting handouts as we go, unless there's some situation where someone can't do it and we're going to make sure there's a social safety net. But we have to incentivize. I agree with the incentivizing, because this is the only way we're going to stay in position in the world. And we've already got that giant national debt. And anyway, so I could go on that road, but I had to throw those things in. And Judge, I just want to thank you in the middle of this, because your passion gets me excited. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to you. Keep going.
Well, let me say, I was in the Peace Corps between college and law school, and I think I'm still in the Peace Corps.
Nice.
When I became a judge, I saw a problem. In fact, the biggest unmet problem that I had, I became a judge at the end of 1983 in the municipal court in Orange County. And I saw that alcohol-related offenses, we'd growl at them, we'd take their money and push them out the door. And if they were an alcoholic, they would be a recidivist. And you'd get these people who had been arrested and convicted 4 times before, then they get drunk again, run through a red light and kill somebody. Why doesn't somebody do something? Who better than me? I put in the first drug court in the country back in by 6 months of my appointment to the municipal court. And we had a drug court up and running, holding people accountable. I tell people, if you even eat rum cake, I'm going to put you in jail. And it wasn't all that funny. And so you'd call the people up first on the report back. I'm sorry you were drinking alcohol. I know you can do better, but I have to put you in jail for the next 2 weekends. Don't drink anymore. I know you can do better. You're doing better at your job. I got letters. Dear Judge Gray, I was going to divorce my husband because he'd get drunk. He was irresponsible with the children, and sometimes he'd hit me. But now that he's on your program, thank you. You've given me my husband back. I mean, how many letters like that do you need? So judges are ultimate social workers. Juvenile court is the most important judging in the country, because you have the abused and neglected children calendar, and you would try to get the parents to be responsible with their children, or you would take the custody away, which is hard to do, but I had to do it, and give them to somebody else, because childhood is fleeting. It's too important. Back to the schools again now, where we have Governor Gavin Newsom in the state of California has 4 children. They're all going in person to private schools, but he's keeping other children from going to private schools. That's called hypocrisy. The answer is no, it's fleeting, it's important. So yes, I'm active, and I'm proud of that. What are we going to do, give up? It's really an important thing, and anything that I can do, I'm proud to do.
It's impressive. Oh boy.
Let me say one more thing, because Sean, sometimes I speak with young attorneys and I talk about public speaking. The most important part of public speaking is showing your audience you believe what you're saying. At least I can do that.
Well, sir, you can do that in speaking wise, but you also have run at a national level. I saw you even some years ago tried to run for U.S. Senate in the state of California as well. So you've been swinging, and that's what it takes. Look at folks. Go ahead,
let me come clean with you. I ran as a Republican in 1998 for U.S. Congress. Then I did not win. I came out and ran in 2004 for U.S. Senate as a Libertarian, ran in 2012 as a Libertarian for Vice President, now in 2020 for President. So I guess I'm out of things to run for. And the next is King, because that's the only thing left that I haven't run for that I haven't lost. Maybe it was my campaign slogan, we all go gray eventually. Maybe that was the reason I didn't get very far.
Anyway,
go gray. You gotta have some fun in this too.
And this is Judge Jim Gray. So everybody get that joke right there. You all go gray eventually. And his website is at judgejimgray.com. So Judge, man, great stuff. So talk to us about, now we're not going to get into the third party system. I've had a conversation with Joe Jorgensen about that and others in the Libertarian Party about that. That is a huge issue. There is a lock in the Democrat and Republican parties. They're not going to let anybody else in. I don't know how we're going to break through that. So we won't go to there. But I would like you to walk down. We still have a few minutes left. I want the listeners to do what you said at the beginning. You've already done some of it, but I want them to kind of tick off. Oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh yeah, I agree with that. And hopefully so far they have agreed with many things you've said. Do you have further you want to go? Let's talk about just the general kind of view and I assume that's a libertarian. You know, I kind of separate out. Let's just say, I don't know. I hate talking about the party platform view. I'm more interested in what's a libertarian point of view of life would be more interesting to me.
Competition works. Incentives work. Live and let live works. Don't tread on me. Don't tread on anybody. You know, you go back to the Constitution, and I ran for president saying I will be the first in the history of the United States for a president to give power knowingly back to Congress. We should not have troops in battle zones for more than 60 days unless there's been a declaration of war. It's not the same thing to have a War Powers Act. Oh, Mr. President George W. Bush, do whatever you think is right with regard to the war on terror. No, if you have a declaration of war, that means that the congressmen themselves, congresswomen themselves, will have to take responsibility. That means, hey, let's find out who's the enemy? What is the goal? How will we know when the goals are met? What's our exit strategy? Today, we have been in Afghanistan with our troops for what, 19 years? Sean, do you know what our goals are there? No one does. But if you have responsibility in Congress, we would require that. So follow the rules. Healthcare. Let me start with this. Have you ever heard an occasion in which the government interfered in the marketplace, in which the prices did not go up and the quality of the goods and services did not go down? No. Education is a prime example. No, bring in competition. Healthcare is a prime example. I'm older than you are, but I was raised in the 50s or middle 60s. We have the best healthcare system in the world. It wasn't even a topic of conversation that we were losing emergency rooms, that we didn't have enough money for, the doctors were making good money, but it wasn't expensive because there was competition. Then you get the government involved, and now look what we've done. P.J. O'Rourke said it best: if you think healthcare is expensive now, wait till it's free. And he's right. So if you want our healthcare system to be run by the equivalent of the Department of Motor Vehicles, that's where we're going. Is that what you want? So we have two areas today. Okay, we have two areas today in which you, I, anyone can get quality healthcare for reasonable competitive prices. What are they? LASIK eye surgery, cosmetic surgery. Why? Because the government is not involved. Oh, come to Dr. Gray. I've done this LASIK surgery 10,000 times, give you a payment plan. It's competitive. Get the government out of it. But if you say, I'm going to repeal Obamacare, which I would, but no, I will replace it with something. Because if you say politically, I'm going to repeal Obamacare, 40% of the voters would think you don't care about me. I do care about you. I want things to get better. So based upon economics, based upon earnings, need, I will give you a voucher that you can use in the private healthcare system to make co-payments, to purchase healthcare insurance and the rest, so that you can be provided for. But you'll always have some copay. I don't care if it's 75 cents, you'll have some copay, so you have some skin in the game. So you will talk with your doctor. Instead of the doctor telling you what to do, you'll be a partner again, and you'll be able to shop around for better deals. So you ask me, get the government out of it, because it always increases the bureaucracy, the fraud, the power. But big government, John, you'll agree with this one. Big government is extremely good at one thing, extremely good. And that is increasing the size, the power, and the cost of government. You look in the last 2 decades, it's just exemplary. That's exactly what we've done. The answer is no.
It's too enjoyable talking to this gentleman, folks. Just need to have this show every day. Okay, so the IRS, let's talk about that. I've always been in favor. I'm curious what your thoughts are on a national sales tax for income versus the way we do it now, which it taxes our revenue. What are your thoughts?
Milton Friedman says you get more of what you subsidize and less of what you tax. Milton Friedman, you get more of what you subsidize, less of what you tax. Today we are subsidizing welfare, we're subsidizing laziness, and we're taxing success. So instead, we get a lot of people buying a lot of stuff, a lot of consumption, but as far as the earnings, they take them elsewhere. They take them offshore, the rest. So if you were to go to a national sales tax, the consumption, you would start being more careful. Now, certainly, if you're going to buy a yacht, you're going to buy a Rolls Royce, you're going to pay some good sales tax or the national sales tax on that. Fine, and people still will. But you're going to get rid of such bureaucracy, such intrusion, such cost for the IRS. And it's one of the most intrusive agencies that we have, because it's going to look into, what did you have for dinner yesterday? Was this really business? Was this not? All the rest. Reduce the bureaucracy, reduce the fraud, and by the way, or just a flat tax. I would combine a flat tax with what we talked about before on the safety net. So I don't care how you spend your money. You know, for every dollar you earn over between $30,000 and $100,000, you'll pay 10 cents to the federal government. I don't care how you spend your money. If you're lucky and you make between 100 and 500,000, of those you'll spend 14 cents of each of those dollars. And if you make you know, more than $500,000, and bless you, Steph Curry or whomever else, you'll pay 18 cents of those dollars and then do away with all of the other deductions. You could send it in on a postcard. But today we spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, just on tax preparation. So H&R Block does not like me. They don't like that idea at all. And a lot of tax accountants don't either, because they'd be out of business. But that would be better for us all.
Thank you for that.
It's not that hard.
No,
I have a chapter on, you mentioned my book, All Rise. And again, we will all rise if we use these libertarian principles. But I have a chapter on healthcare, a chapter on education, a chapter on declarations of war, chapter on liberty, a chapter on raising children, that sort of thing. It's one man's approach. And I don't have all the answers. I proved that already in the last half hour. But you know, at least we should be able to discuss anything. And that's what we do in my book. And I appreciate your mentioning it.
All Rise, The Libertarian Way with Judge Jim Gray. You can get it at his website, judgejimgray.com. It was published by Histria Books. Okay, term limits. Thoughts?
Yes. In fact, I would come out with a new constitutional amendment to require only 9 United States Supreme Court justices. Let's not get into all of that silliness. And have them have term limits of 15 years, for example. So, you know, right now, a federal judge has lifetime tenure, which is fine. But if you're on the United States Supreme Court, 15 years would be enough. And that way you won't have people that are on the edge of depression or whatever, but don't want, I'm a Democrat on the court, I don't want a Republican president, so I'm going to just hang in there. Well, no, you wouldn't have that choice. And you wouldn't have presidents appointing justices who are 40 years old. I don't care who you are. You do not have the background, the knowledge, the wisdom to be on the United States Supreme Court if you're only 40 years old. But if you have 15-year term limits, maybe you'll be appointed when you're 55, something like that, where you have more of that. So I believe in term limits. Term limits is a good thing. The problem is, in California, we have them, so it hasn't worked really well. I would have, for example, if you're in the United States Congress, that's a term of 2 years. You can serve 5 consecutive terms. That's 10 years. Then you have to sit out one. And then if you want to run again and the voters want to vote for you the next time, you can have 5 more terms. So have that cut so you don't get all this seniority stuff in Congress. And U.S. Senate, 2 6-year terms are enough. Sit one out and then do something else. I think it's healthy.
I like that. You know, I've had some experience getting laws passed in Sacramento and California. So I watched what happened. I had a nonprofit that we got some privacy laws put in place. 4 laws in 5 years, actually. We really went to town.
Good for you.
But we also saw the transition to term limits. And what happened in California, in my opinion, it turned me off, is the term limits are so short that no one had any knowledge when they were sitting in there. So I agree with you that it has to have some length of time in a consecutive. And then if you want to come back, I agree that's pretty cool. So that term limits.
Let me try something else.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me try something really radical on you. When we finally passed the Constitution, we had our first Congress. There were each member of Congress served something on the order of 20 to 25,000 constituents. Today, it's like 700, 800,000 constituents. Let's go back to that. So let's have each member of Congress serve 20 to 25,000 constituents. Well, do the math. That means we're going to have something like 2,500 members of Congress. Good. That's fine. But let them stay home. You know, let them, instead of going back and having staffs in Washington and the rest, let them stay home. Let them talk to the baker and the grocer and the rest. And by the internet, they can vote. They can have private caucuses. They could do all of that. It would bring more local. And they might even have a job on the side too. You know, make it, politics is much more local. It would be more helpful. Imagine being a lobbyist trying to go around the country and trying to twist the buttons of 2,500 members of Congress. Still, U.S. senators can still too, but I think that'd be a really healthy idea.
Judge, you ought to write a book. Come on. This is good. And John Chambers, Mr. Constitution, if you're listening out there, he has pushed me on that a lot. We need to have each member of Congress, the House, represent the same that they represented back then, and we'd have a huge number, but then you can at least talk to your representative versus today you cannot. So it's a great idea. Okay, maybe one of the last questions, but I'm curious now your thoughts, because I like your answers. Not just because they agree with me, they seem very sound. I have always had a problem with money in politics. I have also almost got a TV show made called DC Lobby about a lobby firm so that people could get educated on how much power and swing they have. Also, I'm very against money. Let's say you have a representative running in my home state of South Dakota, and it seems to be contested, and you have money coming in from all over the country trying to influence the voters in that little tiny state. So I'm curious, I have lots of reform ideas in that area. Talk to me about your thoughts there, Judge.
Well, the first is, I've tried to mention this before, it matters whether the Republicans or Democrats win because they then push all kinds of money to their supporters. So if you're going to get money out of government, Sean, you have to get government out of money. So that's the first thing. And if you reduce the size of government, bring back competition, then it won't make that much financial difference to me whether I get my person elected or not, because I'm not going to get that money from government anyway. Secondly, I would do away with the ability of any non-human being to donate any money to any political cause or candidate. If I'm a corporation and I can convince my shareholders to donate their own money, terrific. And then remove all restrictions as to how much, because the wealthy always find a way to get the money in there anyway. So remove it. And if Bill Gates is going to support Jim Gray for Congress and you think that I'm in Bill Gates' pocket, then you're going to vote for my opponent. But you publicize this on the internet publicly. If you give me more than $250, whatever it is, it's on the internet. And then, but no corporations, no unions, no non-human beings can donate any of these monies. Because actually, if you're a member of a union and you don't agree with that, you can't stop it. They should have unanimity. It's my money you're spending. If I'm a shareholder of your corporation and I don't agree with that, it should be unanimous. So that's the reform that I would do. But you've got to make these things open and understand Bill Gates. If he were to run for Congress, he could use all the billions that he wants to. Why shouldn't he be able to do the same thing with me? And you mentioned in your little home state of South Dakota. South Dakota, look at what's happening in Georgia now with regard to the runoffs. You're going to see floods of billions of dollars because it matters. Gosh. So it might be that you would try to, donating money is a matter of speech. So I think people should be able to donate money to whomever they wish, be it South Dakota, Georgia, or whatever, but it should only be individuals and it should be fully open in public.
I agree with all that. I just go a little further and go, if there's a way, I don't know how we would do it, but you should be able to only give money to a candidate that if you live within their district or wherever they're coming from. So it's the money coming in is supported by the people that you're going to help versus this outside thing.
And I understand that too, but it is also a matter of free speech that if my brother is running in Oklahoma, or I just really like the person running in Oklahoma, it is a matter of free speech also. There are good thoughts on both sides, but I come down allowing that.
Yep. Okay, good. Well, Judge Jim Gray. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question. What do you call a cow that's just given birth? And I'm sure this is of superseding importance. What do you call a cow that's just given birth? And the answer, of course, is decaffeinated.
And you said that because you use that things like what in your book? Is that what?
Yeah, there's stories in the book too, but I use these in my mediations. I'm doing private mediations now. So I'll ask you a question. It's the best play on words I've ever heard. What do you get, Sean, when you mix an elephant and a rhinoceros? Again, obviously very important. What do you get when you mix an elephant and a rhinoceros? And of course, the answer is elephino. Gotta have some fun.
What a fresh breath of fresh air. Judge Jim Gray, you can find out more about him and get his book at judgejimgray.com. It's Gray, not EY. And the book is All Rise, Libertarian Way with Judge Jim Gray. Judge, this was fascinating. I'll just have to do this about once a week just to keep my spirits up. So thank you
Well,
for being on. I really admire your energy and your thinking and your push out there to actually do something to try and help things out. It's refreshing. It's what my show tries to push to set an example for others. Guys, listening to this, look at, if you have things you're passionate about, find something you're passionate about in your area, your neighborhood, your school, and step up and try and do something to make it better, because you'll be surprised. You actually might make it better. It may not be as hard as you think. So, Judge, thank you for setting a good example and all that you're doing. So, any last words from
nice
you?
to be with you. We'll do it again. It's always good to talk with good people. I think we should be able to discuss anything. My father was one of my few heroes, and he said, you have every right to disagree, but you have no right to be disagreeable. And we've lost that. We should be able to discuss anything. And just because I have a different idea than you do, that doesn't mean I'm evil and doesn't mean I'm unpatriotic. So we should be able to discuss these things. And maybe I can learn a little bit. Do you know, this is my final thought then, the word listen and the word silent have the same letters in them. And listening is a lost art. You can't, if you're talking, you can't be silent, you can't be listening. So we should listen more and understand and be able to talk with each other as human beings, as people that really want the United States of America to thrive. We should all rise together, and we'll keep in that uniform.
Very refreshing. Well said. Thank you, sir, for being on the show today.
It's a pleasure. We'll do it again. Take care.
Judge Jim Gray, I had a great time with that. I don't know if you could tell. Can you tell? I had a great time with that. I love when people agree with me. What the heck? But yeah, seriously, when you look back to the founders of our country, they were, it's hard for me to put a label on something. It's hard for someone to label me Republican. Definitely impossible for someone to label me Democrat. But I also don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think as a Republican, there's nothing over there that the Democratic Party agrees with that I also don't agree with. And likewise, it's impossible for someone to stick me in a label, first of all. And libertarianism or Libertarian Party, just like Republican Party, Democrat Party, Green Party, it's hard to label, I think, people, because I don't think you're just libertarian. Okay. Regardless of that, love the stuff. The founders of our country very much felt strongly about people having freedom to do what they need to do in order to, in the pursuit of happiness. Of course, it can't affect others negatively, but we have a government that has taken over our freedoms, have kept a slice of people through welfare and other support systems at the bottom. Not to say that we don't need to help people at the bottom, but too many that I've talked to who are in that kind of community have said how it actually keeps them entrapped. So there's a lot of changes. And I just want to say for the record, I don't think being president of the United States, I don't see why you could not come up with 75% of the voters wanting you in and staying for your next term. I've always had this dream. If I ever was president, ran for president and won, I would make the announcement that I will not run for the next term. If you want me to stay in, you vote me in, but I'm not going to run. I'm not going to run again. I'm starting now. I'm not going to have a party. I'm not in one party or the other. I'm the president of the United States for the people, and I'm not going to run at the next juncture. So if you all don't like me come 4 years from now, you can vote me out, but I'm not going to run again. I'll serve again if you ask, but I won't run again. I've always thought that. I've always thought there's absolutely, I think that you could make, just ran into the microphone. I think there's absolutely, you could get things done in the country to please enough of the people that 75% of the people would say, we need to keep this person. Now, I'll tell you the one little thing in there that may not throw this awry is the media. Media needs the game. They need the Republicans fighting the Democrats. They need this game in order to keep you juiced up in order to come to them to learn what's going on tomorrow. Just so you know, that's what's going on. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. You can always email me at heysean@seanburke.net. You can get all of my shows at seanburke.net. This show goes out on iTunes and SoundCloud all over the place. Also on YouTube. So there you go. Thank you for joining me. That was a fun interview. Hope you liked it too. Adios.